And that goes back to the conversation that we were just having, right? Like, whatever we choose to do, it has to be right for us, and we can't just take on another group's identity, because one of the things here
Right.
is, if it was so powerful and it was working so well for them, why is it not working now?
Well,
Why
that
are there no African nations or places that are comparable to European power? We're talking about
now,
raw
now,
power now, right?
and nowadays, not in the ancient world, but nowadays in modern times.
Right.
What's going on, family? I'm just here to remind you that you can get yourself a copy of my new book, On the Shoulders of Giants, Volume 4 of the Caribbean, by visiting my website, www.ontheshoulders1.com, and help support me as I continue on my mission to make sure that my people have our information, even though, there are many people trying to stop us from learning our history. But hey, we can teach ourselves. And one of the tools we can use is my new book, On the Shoulders of Giants, Volume 4, The Caribbean. Remember, visit my website, www.ontheshoulders1.com, to get your copy. And I appreciate your support.
Black people, what it is. It's Friday, so you already know what that means. It's me, it's Pat, it's Bricky Breakdown Friday. And you know how I go right here on this On the Shoulders of Giants YouTube channel. Joseph Ward, Patrick Irvin. And we find clips and find videos and find audio of our master teachers, plethora of our master teachers, and we take those clips, we put these clips in this space, and we break this information down to make sure that we understand the information, make sure we can articulate the information so that we can use the information to better our individual and collective situations as much as possible with whoever is down with getting down with what we down with. Ain't that right, Pat?
Word.
Right. We're finding our tribe so we can arrive. It don't already rhyme like I wanted to, but I said it in the way. Find your tribe so you can arrive. I'm gonna tweak it a little bit, but it's all good. It's all good. But thank you to everybody who has been rocking with me, especially everybody who's been watching the new videos where we're reading the chasm, and it's been great because great information in there. We just learned about the National Industrial was Revolution Act. So we just I said it right.
Close enough.
Yeah, what is National Industrial Recovery Act?
Yeah.
Yeah, national. That's what I thought recovery, but I don't know. But okay, so the National Industrial Recovery Act and how that greatly affected the Black communities and especially Black families. Um, so there's a lot of great information in those videos, especially because there's a lot of great information in the book. So make sure you check out those videos. Also, make sure you check out my weekly videos that I drop every Wednesday where I'm introducing you to a new sung or unsung hero of the African diaspora. So make sure you check out all of those videos that I got on the channel and all the shorts that I'm dropping. I'm trying to drop as much content as possible. So rock with me. And we got more new content coming soon. We got more new content. So stick with me because I'm trying to be the hardest working man out here in these streets. So let's do this. All right. So today, Breakdown Friday, we have a video or a clip from Dr. Marimba Ani, and talking about, do Black people really realize what happened to us, why we're in the situation that we're in, and do Black people even recognize that we're in a situation? So we're going to be breaking that down, and
Mm-hmm.
what can we do about it? So
Mm-hmm.
let's jump into it.
People that white people were committing biological genocide against us, and that by the year 2000 whatever there would be no more black people, you would get one reaction. But you're saying that we're being threatened with cultural and psychological extinction. How do you get African people to see the urgency of this situation?
I don't know, frankly, if you can. I think that we have to focus on young people, young African people who have not been so conditioned with a way of thinking that supports European imperialism, European power, that they still have the ability to use their intuition, their spirituality, their Africanness to create, to think beyond the limitations that have been given to them in European academies. I think most of us as adults, as elders, have been so conditioned that we're afraid to move beyond the parameters that have been defined by our enemies.
I'll stop it right there. Asking her, basically in a nutshell, can Black people fix our situation? Do we recognize what's going on, and can we fix our situation? Is it possible for us to, as a collective, because it seems like he's asking it from a collective standpoint, as a whole, can Black people advance our situation? Can we get ourselves out of poverty? Can we get ourselves out of these disparities? Can we get ourselves from under the thumb and from being 100% dependent upon white America? As a collective, as a whole, I don't think that's the desire of all Black people in America. I think that's a desire of a number of Black people in America. And I think an issue even with that is once you get to that number of Black people in America, there are those who have their specific idea of how Black America should be liberated and how Black America should be ran. And those ideas compete with each other. That creates conflict, unfortunately, especially from those who consider themselves leaders. That creates conflict. But once again, I just don't think all Black people in America even give a damn about us as a collective changing our situation. I do believe that we should be focusing on ourselves as individuals, and once again, finding your tribe. That's what I'm on. Finding your tribe, finding that critical mass of people that you all have enough of the similar ideas to be able to build and create something with. Because you're going to have something to pass down. You're going to have something for yourself and your community that you're with to be able to compete. We have to be able to compete. We have to be able to compete in this world, and right now we're not able to compete, and we have to make ourselves competitive. And is that gonna happen for everybody? I just really don't think so. She also talked about focusing on the youth rather than the adults, because pretty much most of the adults, or if not too many of the adults, are so far gone. Focusing on the youth. Now, I did like the way she said that, because she's talked to me. What I heard is she's talking about a group of children who have been exposed to information that can liberate their minds to knowledge of self, just lack of better words. The children who have been exposed to knowledge of self, those children who have been exposed to knowledge of self, have the chance to be able to advance the culture, advance as much as the culture, as much as the society as possible. Those who have been exposed to it, and in addition to that, in my opinion, those who have been exposed to that have to be in an environment that cultivates them to be able to be productive. And if that's not happening, then you can say focus on the church, but nothing's going to come out of that. And I'm not saying she's saying that, but that's what I'm saying. But I just don't think everybody's going to make it. But for those who are in that school of thought, we have to be more productive. Let's just say we have to be more productive for tangible outcomes. And we keep saying that a lot, and we're not. But what do you think?
I think we gotta. I like the way she answered it, and I love her, by the way. Her book on Urugu and other things, I really like her work.
That's gonna be a book we read.
Yeah, it's a great book. One of the things that I think we have to be real about, that I think Dr. Neely Fuller Jr. is one of the few people that's real about it.
Hey, blunt.
Is that most black people in America don't care.
Right.
And so it's not going to happen the way a lot of people in the pro-black community have been conditioned to think it's going to happen.
Right.
I would argue that it's not going to happen at all, not in mass.
Nah,
I
not a
think,
mask.
yeah, I think there are going to be small silos, small communities, small towns that
Mm-hmm.
spring up. But as far as a mass movement that reshapes America, that's not going to happen.
Nah.
Um, and so I appreciate her opinion of saying she doesn't think so to the initial question asked. Um, but I'm taking it a step further, even in reaching out to the youth, because I think a lot of times we forget about how connected everything is. I've been saying reach out to the youth for a number of years, and I've actually been trying to reach out to the youth
Yeah.
for around about a decade now. And one of the things that I've learned from that is you can't get to them soon enough.
Yeah. You got to get to them as fast as possible.
Right. And you just can't, because you need to get to them before society does. The problem with that is society gets to them before they're born. Like
Yeah. But
while they're still in the uterus, they're absorbing sounds, sense, the mother's emotions, foods. All of these things are coming in that are already pre-programming the way this child is going to be wired. So when you give, and that's the problem is a lot of us had this idea that we give birth to a clean slate. No, you give birth to something that's already been pre-programmed.
yeah.
So you got to start the child's educational process, and education means indoctrination. You have to start that process by deprogramming.
Yeah.
And
But
go ahead. I'm sorry.
no. Finish.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
One of the things that used to bug me when doing community work in the past, I have a better understanding now, and I have a solution, and I'm explaining all that. But one of the things that used to bug me is, all right, we're constantly in these communities working with these children,
Mm-hmm.
but we can see progress in a small percentage of these children. Now we're impacting them positively. All of them are being positively impacted. We can see all of these children are learning new things, and all of these children are being exposed to new things, and all of these children are being able to see new options. But all of these children are not going to be able to exercise all these things because of the environment
Right.
that the child is in. And getting to what you were saying, and it kind of souls up everything, because I'm gonna just say it, a lot of time y'all parents mess it up for y'all kids. Let's just say it what it is. Like I've been saying, I don't know how to say it. No, why say it any other way? The us adults and these parents, we be messing it up for the kids. Um, a community word for it is wraparound services, right? Or
Right.
wraparound support, or work, whatever you do, because the total environment has to be affected if you think you're going to positively affect these children, unless the children comes from an environment that's already conducive to their learning and them being better. But if not, you're gonna have to affect the whole environment.
Right. You and we're talking about wraparound services. We're talking about THC, or the total human concept. We're talking about a lot of different things that have to be on the straight, and then we go back to, and this is why it takes a village, because it's too much to do for one person, even for a collective two parents. It's too much to do even with one
Yes,
child,
yes.
to
But
try to deprogram and reprogram.
also we got one of the things that I took a step back to get my economics together,
Mm-hmm.
because another thing that was aggravating the hell out of me is I couldn't make a greater impact because of the lack of resources.
Mm-hmm.
And realizing that I need to increase my economics. I need to bring in more money. Basically, I need to have more money at my disposal to be able to put back into my community, right? And that's going to be one of the ways that I can more positively affect these kids, because also being in these communities, understanding the psyche of these kids want to see success, and these kids need to be able to see success. So we have to be successful, and we need to be successful on all types of levels, but we need to be successful. They need to be able to see somebody who's wealthy, who's not an athlete, a rapper, or a drug dealer, anything like that. And I'm not saying you as the individual have to be wealthy, but I am saying we need to have access to resources. And if we don't have access to resources, we're not really serious about affecting the youth.
Right, and that's where it goes into what's being said a lot now, although in a different sphere. It's something that um is still being said and needs to be said a lot more, is that we've got to start treating businesses like businesses.
Yes. Yes.
Um and stop treating them. Look, community service projects are cool when the
They need to be ran like
community,
businesses.
right, when the community is overflowing with resources, then you can run your community service project like a community service project, because
Right.
the resources are available to do that.
Right.
But what we have to understand is, and again, it goes back to this total human concept, which ties into wraparound services and all of that. We're not just trying to instill ideas into children. We're trying to get them to look at the world differently, and that means give them a different way to look at the world. You've got to show them that. So
Yep.
it's and that also means showing them different environments. I'm all for going into the hood and showing the kids in the hood how to clean up their
Bruh.
environments and this, that, and the third.
Bruh.
But you've also got to show them environments that's already happened then. Show
Bruh.
them
See,
environments that have already been improved.
that's why it's so bad. Like, I'm working my ass off to get these resources, because one of the things that's a part of my nonprofit is is a research portion, where I want to take underprivileged Black children, and we go as far as we can around the world and around our community, around the country, doing actual firsthand research, so that way they get to learn something and see something new. That's one of the goals. So it's like, that's why I'm busting my ass to do this. But it's just, from all of my years working in the community, one of the greatest lessons that I've learned is, no matter how bad you want to make change, your plan of action has to be tailored for that specific situation, to deal
Mm-hmm.
with the issues and the root of that specific situation. Take your ego out of it, because if your plan of action is not specific to tackle the problems that's in front of you, you're not going to do nothing but make the problems in front of you worse for the people who have to experience it. And you're gonna make it worse for the people who come behind you who try to help.
And that's exactly why when we did the community development plan, we structured it as a scaffolding the way we did,
Hmm.
was because like any national plan that tries to dig down into the weeds and the specific is going to fail.
Yep.
It's got to be something, and that's something that I think we spend so much time thinking about the big picture that we miss the fact that the big picture oftentimes is a generalization that isn't going to work for the specific instances that people live in.
Man, the pieces of the puzzle got to be put together in order for the big picture to be there.
But these are the conversations we have when you're having conversations like we've been having on a philosophical level. But when you start having these conversations on a strategic level, when you're analyzing your environment and starting to come up with plans to improve the situation, and you're having problems, and the conversation is centered around the problem with the Black community, is you're already on a path to
Yeah.
fail your local Black community.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You're,
Because
you're
you're thinking
already
too
there.
broad. You're thinking too
Right.
broad. You're not thinking what's in front of you. But
Right.
yeah, but let's continue. Yes, yeah, this is gonna be a good one. So yeah.
Our thinking, so that our vision is limited. And so we are really not the people who should be conceptualizing the plans, the movements, what we should be building. But I focus on the younger people who hopefully, are still more in touch with what is natural to African people. And if I can affirm that in them, they will see the urgency. I find that in my teaching. I find that in teaching young people, that once they are affirmed and introduced in a conscious way to the African worldview, it becomes crystal clear to them. And they see in an urgency in us as African people building for self, as opposed to imitating forms which have been put in place to make sure that we continue to be oppressed.
Culturally,
Right there.
Yeah, I was gonna stop. You probably think of what I'm thinking, so go ahead.
I don't know. I will say this is one area where I kind of disagree with her a little bit. So the background of the book is that the book was, according to her, the first attempt at understanding the European model of the world from a non-European perspective,
Mm-hmm.
right? So she's looking at things not from the eyes of a European or somebody that's been taught and educated and brought up through European systems, but as somebody that's been brought up through African systems.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the problem that a lot of us are going to have, one thing that I've learned, I'll say this, in my dealings with kids, is that the natural view for them is the American view.
If you over here,
Yes, if you're here. So the new systems that she's talking about being created are going to, for those systems to exist in the way that she talks about in her book, those systems are going to have to be developed by people that are not African Americans, that are not black people in America. So then you run into this situation of, will those systems be beneficial to black people in America because they weren't conceptualized by people that were or had the black American experience?
yeah. So we're in the same ballpark, okay? Because in addition to that, my question will be, where now in 2020, because we have to think about this in 2022. Not
Right.
we can't think about this in the time where she said this, but thinking about this in 2022. But I still believe that this is just as relevant. This was just as relevant when she said when this happened as it
Mm-hmm.
is now. Are we are are there any African cultures, mindsets, ideologies, ways of life that exist in today's world that have not been affected by European domination, have not been influenced by European domination, that have not been in some way dictated by European domination?
Not any major ones. I mean, because you got to think the mere act of observing changes. So if white people know about it, then it's been changed just by white people observing it.
So, right. So, with that being said, if there are no, or if there are very few purely African worldviews that have not been affected by European hands, once again, like what you said, for us in America, for Black people in America in 2022, for one, will that mindset really, or will those ideologies really take hold? And like you said, two, are those ideologies really what we need for Black Americans in 2022? Or do Black Americans in 2022, like we said in a previous breakdown, do we, because I think I'm just saying, I think we need to come up with concepts and things on our own, and we're gonna have to live with the fact that we are people globally who have been affected negatively by European domination. So making it, as for those of us who know better and who are changing the consciousness and the mindsets, ideologies of how we exist as much as possible, we create something on our own that'll be tangible for us here in America right now, that we can use right now, and not something that'll necessarily be foreign and have to be given to us to use, but something that we created on our own, that we've cultivated. Because it just, in my opinion, I could be wrong, but I feel like that would just suit us better.
No, I agree. And we had this conversation when we talked about defining our culture and defining
Right.
what it means to be a part of our community. One of the blind spots that I think a lot of us in the pro-black community have is that we are so negatively positioned towards anything European that we fail to see the European perspective within our perspectives. Like we
Right.
fail to see how we've been impacted and shaped by it. And so then you have an interesting dynamic happening where when other black skinned or brown skinned, however, melanated peoples choose to mix in European concepts with their own cultural concepts and traditions to create something new, like we saw in a lot of cases with the Southern Catholics in Louisiana, um, or the some of the newer purveyors of voodoo
Hmm.
that mixed in some European
Yeah, got
concepts
got the
of
Santeria.
Christianity and other things like that, right?
Yeah.
Those people are celebrated and held up. But whenever we try to say, well, we should do something similar for ourselves, it's not African enough.
But the continent of Africa was heavily colonized and is still being heavily colonized. So African people on the continent, yes, they still have their own culture, but they have been African people today have been greatly affected by European
Hmm.
colonization, Arab colonization, and Asian colonization. So I don't know where we would get a mindset that will be purely African that we would use. And the other question, like I said earlier, is if we do find that those ideologies and that way of life that is purely African, will that really be something that will suit us here in America in 2022?
I mean, like it won't. I'll
But
say that directly.
it that in itself over time still will be, wouldn't it be watered down or still be affected by European domination ideologies over
Every
time?
even if we did create the system, which it wouldn't work because it wouldn't work for who we are as a people now. Um, Even if we did create the system, just by virtue of where the system is implemented here in America,
It's going to be
it would
affected.
change.
Yeah.
It would still not work. So the for me, look, I'm gonna be honest, and I know a lot of people aren't gonna like it. We have to look at ourselves as an ethnic group first before we begin to look at ourselves as a race. We've got to take that step to define the culture of what it means to be a black American with all the shared experiences and the mixed up unknown history, heritage, and DNA that comes with that.
Yeah.
And then we can start looking at joining the global
Right.
black race, the global African diaspora, and bringing something else to the table. Right now, we're approaching the situation in a very European mindset from a position of, well, we lead the way. We'll show them this, we'll show them that. I can't explain, I can't tell you how many times we get in these conversations, even where we're talking about going over to the continent to do various things with people over there. And in that conversation, you have Black Americans acting like they're going to go over there and fix it.
Yeah.
That's that like but that's our
That blows
blind
me. That
spot.
blows my mind. You can't fix them because you ain't fixed what you got going on at home.
Right, they bring more to the table culturally than you do because we haven't even defined who we are. We're
Right.
still trying to hold on to an unknown legacy that's over 400 years old for many
Right.
of us.
Right.
So I've taken the step to saying, even going as far as saying we need to re-identify ourselves collectively. Because let's be honest, the African American label is a label they gave us. The
Hmm.
connection to Africa is something that continues to divide us, not in the sense that people don't understand where we come from. I think we got to clear that up.
A lot of black
Every
people
black
reject that.
every black person knows where we, well, with the exception of the new school ones that say that
Mhm.
we are the Native Americans, but
Or the black Jews. So,
well, right. But most of the black people that we're talking about working with in the pro-black space understand the difference comes in and how we connect to that lineage. We need to connect to each other first.
yeah, yeah, yes, 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 yes. All right, let's move forward.
And psychologically, do you think we realize what we have lost?
No, not. You know, it's ironic because we don't realize it on a conscious level.
Mm-hmm.
Yet we live it every day in the way we walk, in the way we talk, in the way in the music we create. There is a depth of spirituality which exists in us as a people, which has continued since our origins, that our ancestors have passed to us, and which we continue to pass on ourselves, that we don't consciously recognize as a strength. We don't realize that it is something that we need to use to think with, so that when we are presented with a European worldview in the classroom, we think that that's the only way to be. That's the only way to think.
I do agree. I agree with her wholeheartedly that we have, especially us, the new ones, the younger, the generations under us, because we, adults, we done a
Yeah.
horrible job of producing productive citizens. But now, but even a lot of the older generations, I believe most black people have no idea what really happened to us. I think they have a well, they know slavery happened, and they know slavery was a bad thing. But I don't think most black Americans really understand how uh, damaging and terrorizing and just messed up slavery was, and the damage that it done to us, like physically, psychologically, mentally, emotionally, like on all levels. It really, really, really just broke us down. And eh, that's something you have to study. I'm not going to even say that's my opinion. That's my experience. That's something you have to actively have a will to study and really see what really happened to black people, especially like you're talking about on the psychological level, or in trying to explain why we behave the way we behave, why we treat each other the way we treat each other. Because like the example is like just looking at the music, right? Um, we glorify the worst of our culture, the worst of our art, especially when it comes to music. We glorify the worst and we make excuses for it until tragedy happens. And then when tragedy happens, we want to talk about the tragedy and all the things, but we still don't have an understanding of how the things that we create still contribute to that, whether consciously or unconsciously. So we don't know what happened to us. And she's also talking about helping to reshape black minds that have been structured by European ways, and restructuring those black minds to become African minds, or even cultivating African minds within the European world. I think to still go back to what we were saying earlier is we're going to have us in America in 2022 moving forward. We're going to have to live with the fact that we can, no matter how much restructuring we do, we're still going to have those European elements that are left over, because that is the culture that we exist in. And that doesn't mean we cannot restructure our minds to become productive, but we still got to understand that it's the dominant culture that we live. It's the position we've put ourselves in. It's the position that we've put ourselves in because we are so dependent upon white America for everything. The people who complain about the schools don't put themselves in positions to where they don't have to put those kids in those schools. So it's the position that we put ourselves in. I don't know how else to say. I'm just saying it like that. The position that we put ourselves in, no matter how much restructuring that we do, we're still going to have those European elements.
Yeah, I agree with her that we have lost.
Oh yeah.
And there are a number of books talking about what is intrinsic to the black community versus what's learned versus what's innate, what's in us. Going all the way back to the late 1800s, black people have been exploring this concept. I still disagree, like we said earlier, with this idea that well, part of the problem is we don't like we would have to define what an African worldview even is. And that's
For
something
us, yeah, we're
that
gonna have to define it for us.
right. And that goes back to the conversation that we were just having, right? Like whatever we choose to do, it has to be right for us. And we can't just take on another group's identity, because one of the things here
Right.
is if it was so powerful and it was working so well for them, why is it not working now?
Well,
Why
that
are there no African nations or places that are comparable to European power? We're talking about
now,
raw
now,
power now, right?
and nowadays, not in the ancient world, but nowadays in modern times.
Right. So I think about all those things. And then it just goes back to, you know, I just disagree with this concept that we need to remake ourselves in an image that's foreign to us. I think black people's greatest strength is also our greatest weakness, and that's our adaptability. You
Mhm.
put black people in any environment, and for good or bad, they will adapt to that environment. And it's hard to create a new type of worldview, a new concept of how to exist in the world when you're still living in the one that was created by your current existence. That
Yeah.
is extremely difficult to do. I don't know that it's ever been done. Um, so you just run into all of these barriers to entry where, I hear a lot of black people talking about our strength is our religion and our spirituality, but then I see the way that has been used against us to the
But
point where now it's been almost permanently turned against us.
well, I mean, how can religion be your strength and how can your religion and your spirituality that was given to you by your slave masters that haven't really served you other than being a coping mechanism, how can that be your strength? Like Christianity for the black people at the most part has just been a great coping mechanism to cope with the terrorism that we've been dealing with. Let's just call it what it is. Let's just be real. That's really what it was. So that in itself can't be a strength. But taking okay, so in my opinion, so us creating a worldview for ourselves that's purely Black American, it's still going to have elements of African culture and it's still going to have some African lens in it because that's a part of who we are, no matter what. Because saying, and I'm saying this to make it clear, us saying that we need to create a Black American worldview does not exclude any Africanness because
Right.
African history, African culture, African elements is a part of who we are. They've always been a part of who we are, and they're always going to be a part of who we are. But it's a part of who we are in our way of living here in America. And that's what we need to, that's the way we need to look at it. We can't try to look at a worldview that's 3,000 or 4,000 years old that may have served African people in Africa 3,000 or 4,000 years ago. We have to look at worldviews or we have to create a worldview that's going to serve us as Black people in America today. And once again, it's still going to have African elements because that's who we are. African elements are a part of who we are.
And I think that one of the things we need to really be doing, and especially as our generation gets older and becomes the next generation of crazy old people,
Yeah.
um, we've previous generations, uh they provided the scaffolding, a
Yeah,
general
yeah, yeah,
worldview,
yeah.
a general blueprint. It has to become our responsibility to look at that general blueprint and make a specific plan out of it.
So,
And that can't happen when you're so blinded by false reverence, because that's what it is, false reverence, that you can't be critical of an idea because it was presented by a master teacher and somebody that's highly respected. I teach, and one of the greatest joys that I've found in my time working with children, right, is when a child takes something that I said to the next level and then rolls it back around and can show me where there's a flaw in my logic.
I'm
Because now the student becomes the teacher.
I'm gonna just say this. I don't think Dr. Rashidi would have even considered working with me in any type of way if I didn't have my own ideas, my own thoughts, my own research and stuff. I don't I don't believe, no matter what nobody say, they can't convince me that these master teachers are looking for parrots.
Right.
I believe they're looking for thinkers. I don't think they have a problem with somebody challenging them. You just need to have your stuff together if you're gonna challenge them.
Right. And that's what I'm trying to, and you got it across a lot better than I did. Because I I adore Dr. Amos Wilson, Dr. John Henry Clark,
But you
all of
don't
these
agree with
guys.
everything they say. You don't agree with
Right.
100%.
Ivan Van Sertima. I don't agree with, now I respect the research, the body of work, and the things that they did. And I even respect why they, because from their perspective at their time with the information they had available, it was cool. For many of us now, we're living 30, 40 years after they presented their information. And we've seen a lot of the things that they were suggesting actually try to be implemented, and we've seen it not work. So now it becomes our responsibility to take that
We
foundation and move on it, build something on it, do something more with it. And so when I listen to, because one of the things that I love about what she did again is that she was the first person that I heard really articulate what it means to present something from a different worldview, right?
Mhm.
And I'm not saying she was the first person to do it. I'm saying she was the first person I heard do it. Everybody else was kind of talking about how to make a black space in the white system.
Yeah, yeah.
She was talking about, okay, and then you heard people occasionally say, well, we need to create a new system. She was
Right.
one of the first people to say, this is what a new system would look like, right? This is how
Mhm.
you go about doing that, right? So I can appreciate that about what she did, while at the same time saying, well, based on my learning, my knowledge, my interpretation of your work and many of your contemporaries, your peers' works, this is going to be a problem right
Right.
here, and
Right.
addressing that. And I'm bringing this up because this worldview that she's presenting is one that is parroted more times than any other worldview that I've ever heard. More than Dr. Amos Wilson, more than Dr. John Henry Clark, more than Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, more than all of these people. The view she's presenting, and I'm not going to say it's her view because I don't know
Mhm.
who
You just the
created the
first person
view.
you heard saying it.
Right. But the view that she's presenting is a view that I hear parroted ad nauseum with no explanation, no stepping up of the thinking, no critical analysis. They just shit it out like a baby with diarrhea.
Yeah. Nah, I'm with
That's not gonna work.
you. I'm with you. Let's move forward.
Because we didn't come with anything. So I don't think that we are aware on a conscious level of what it is that we've moved
Right.
away from in terms of power.
Stop right there real
You
quick.
see, that's what we're not aware.
I'm gonna say this too. I agree with her. We're not aware of what we lost,
Mm.
but I don't think we care either, because
Yes. The majority of us don't give a damn. Yes.
And see, and the further we get away from it, the less we're going to care until it inevitably just doesn't matter at all.
Like,
But here's one of the other things. I'm gonna say this and then I'm gonna be quiet for a while, right? I've heard a lot of people that have gone over to African nations, right? And they talk about how at home they felt, right? They'd never seen so many black people together in one place. That's what they say.
mm-hmm.
Now I've begun questioning those people because most black people in America live around majority of the
Majority of
black
black
people.
people, right?
So especially when they come from predominantly well-known, predominantly chocolate cities like Atlanta or
DC.
Washington D.C., you know, or various
Hey,
places in New York,
I
right?
live in Tallahassee, and I've been I see black people the majority of my day. The majority of the people I see, the majority of the people I'm around is black people, and my city
Right,
is small. So,
right. And Tallahassee is 35%, 35% black, right?
mm-hmm.
And I know people in Tallahassee that have never seen a white person, like actually interacted with them.
Right,
So when I hear people saying I went over there and I just felt so at home because I saw so many black faces, so many people look like me, and then I thought about how the power structure is powered by people that look like me. And again, now I'm thinking again, places like Charlotte that were predominantly black power structures, places like Atlanta, DC that are predominantly black power structure, right? You begin to ask yourself, okay, what's different about these places? And then you come to the realization the difference is the perceived notion they have about those places as compared to the perceived view that they have about places here. That's not a real thing. That's something that's happening in their heads. So now not only are we having to compete with white supremacy and those other things, but we're having to compete with the very ideas that we have about black people being inferior
well,
to other black people all over the globe, and it just becomes a major challenge.
it's like what Dr. Rashidi said. If white supremacy would, if white people, all white people just left the globe today, white supremacy would still continue because black people would continue the practices.
Yeah.
Would continue our niggatry.
So right, and so that's where I'm saying, right, like it no, black people are not aware of what they've given up, what they've lost, but they don't care.
Well,
They're looking for something that will make them feel good, and that can largely be artificially created. And that was the example I was using. The dynamic of going over to an African city and feeling empowered, seeing all those black faces, is a total illusion because you can find the same thing here in America physically and factually, but it won't have the same emotional response because of their viewpoints. I'm
right,
sorry, go ahead.
right. What was I about to say? I forgot what I was about to say. That's all.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all.
Could you talk some about how we came to be who and what we are today? If you understand the question.
I think I do.
Okay.
I think that we have to look back at a period that I call the Ma'afa. We as Africans were very consciously stripped of our culture. Now, that becomes a platitude. You know, everybody's saying that. Stripped of our culture, but we have to see that we had a strong culture and so forth. But nobody seems to realize the depth of what that means. Being stripped of our culture meant being conditioned to accept ourselves as inferior beings, okay? It meant that we were conditioned to feel that we had to be dependent on Europeans, dependent on white people, that we could not do things for ourselves and in our own image. That conditioning began with a long period of terrorism, which was very physical, physically manifested. At the same time, there was the breaking of the will. So there was cultural violence, I call it, in the book, as well as the physical violence, which was very important. We then came to a period in which we mistakenly thought we were free. We're now at a point where we think that we have freedom, the ability to be whatever it is that we can be within this society and so forth. Yet what happens is that we are still thinking within a modality that has been determined by those who would oppress us.
So to me, when she's saying that, okay, slavery happened, and then all of the Jim Crow, Black codes, redlining, all of the terrorism that happened during slavery, all the terrorism that happened after slavery, and still the things that happen today that are on a systematic level, that's still happening today. All these things affected the psyche of Black people, affected the lives of Black people. It affected all 9 areas of human activity for Black people.
Right.
So most people don't realize that. Most people are not going to realize that. That's just how it is. But now she's talking about, okay, physically, we were set free from chattel slavery. Physically, we were set free, but the programming was already set. So we're existing freely, but the behavior that we exhibit and the programming, the behavior that we have, that we exhibit because of the programming that we have, is still doing the bidding for the dominant society, basically, in a nutshell. Yes, we believe that we have this autonomy. Yes, I can do whatever I want to do. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But yet, when we look at all our statistics that really show where we are, we can really see that our behavior is working against us. I believe right now we are our biggest obstacles that are in our way right now. I believe we are the biggest obstacle. Now that doesn't mean that we don't know why we're the biggest obstacle. We know why we're the biggest obstacle. We're explaining why we're the biggest obstacle. We went through all these years of terrorism, but we are the biggest obstacle. Now, my thing is, I have a bigger issue with those who are supposed to know better, those who are supposed to be conscious, those who are supposed to be awake, those who teach it, talk it, smell like it, look like it. I always talked about people who look like Africa, walk like Africa, talk like Africa, smell like Africa, their hair look like Africa, they speak Africa, all these things, but their actions are so niggerish and European, right? So you have these drones. It's like your drones, like your zombies. It's like what she explained. I'm thinking about like one of those movies like 1984 where people are programmed to exist a specific way, like Snowpiercer or something like that. You're programmed to exist this specific way. I keep telling people zombies are real. Zombies are real. Zombies are the brain dead automatomic people that you see walking around every day that's just existing. Those are the zombies that they be talking about in the movies. That's what she's explaining. Yeah, we're physically free from actual chattel slavery, but we're zombies walking around doing the bidding for white people.
Yeah, I think I like the way she positions it. That most people don't know what that means.
Right.
To be stripped. Because right, I agree with her. I think we can take it a step further though. Most people don't even the ones that do begin to think about what it means to be stripped. They don't think about the actual process of being stripped and how that, so because how do you strip somebody's culture from them? You put them in a situation where their culture absolutely does not work.
Right.
It works to their detriment. And then if you want to reprogram them, you give them something, right, that works better. and
and
you let them make the decision to
and that
die
right.
or choose the better option. Go ahead.
And that has to be, i.e., the scene from Roots when Kunta Kinte was being beaten. There has to be consequences, and just adding on what you're saying, there has to be consequences for these people in this new environment for trying to continue their cultural practices. Because if there are no consequences, it'll take longer to strip them of their cultural practices.
Right, because I believe Dr. Marimba says it. Culture is the self-defense, the immune
The immune
system of a
system.
community.
Yes, I love that quote.
So, right, so here's the thing, right? We have to begin to look at what sort of culture we had to begin with as we make this analysis, right? Because
Mhm.
we know that white people tried to subjugate other people,
Right. They
and
subjugated
we know
themselves.
they know that we know that a lot of those other people, like the Tasmanians and others, chose to die out and become an extinct culture group instead of becoming slaves and being reprogrammed. So
Mhm.
we have to also take into consideration, what does that mean that we were willing to choose this existence over death? And
Mhm.
that's where I go back to our greatest strength is
Is
actually
adaptability.
our adaptability.
Right.
We will give up anything to stay alive, which is, if you read a lot of the some of the books written by old white colonizers and things of that nature, they speak about the black person's willingness to accept their lot in life.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
one thing that continues to drive us is the root of our culture is our ability and willingness to accept and adapt. And
Yeah.
we don't address that whenever we talk about these situations. We talk about how they did this to us, how they did that to us. They did do all these things to us, but it worked because of our willingness to accept and adapt. So how do we create a situation where we
We don't have to adapt.
right. Well, here's the thing, right? Culture is always existing and it's always changing and adapting to the environment. How do we create an environment where we can take control of that
Right.
process?
Right. For full autonomy of the way we exist, the way we think, the way we walk, the way we talk. Like we recreate culture in our image as people who have had a reshaping of a mindset that's more conducive to our advancement rather than our detriment. So
So
yeah.
yeah, and so that's where I go to it from. Like, people don't understand. They don't, and I'm not saying they don't understand, because I do believe a lot of people do understand, but I think, or would understand if they thought about it. But I don't think there are enough people thinking about not only what it means to have your culture stripped from you, but what it means that you survived the process.
Yeah. 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 Let's keep going.
Who would control us. And we don't see beyond that. So the question for me becomes, who controls how you think? We have the ability to create our own structures, our own theories, our own definitions of reality. To look at the African worldview, to look at, for instance, the Dogon people, to look at the Kemetic people, to look at our own people who have, even look at Carter G. Woodson, for instance, the miseducation of the Negro, which I don't think was really ever understood by us, and to use these things as inspirations for the building of institutions, the creation.
So I'm gonna just say this because I was watching YouTube this weekend and I was peeping a debate. I ain't gonna say who all in the debate or whatever, but one of the things that I got from the back and forth is one party in that has a mindset of, because this happened to us, we really can't change our situation. Like, because this happened to us, we have to just accept this and only complain about it. And I'm like, no, no, no. You understand what has happened to you and you work your ass off to change it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you got to put in we have to, black people, we got to be willing to bust our ass for the liberation that we claim we want. We can't beg for it. We're not going to march for it. We have to work for it, and we have to take it. We have to. I believe moving forward, we need that. That the mindsets in the Black community or the pro-Black community, Pan-African community, whatever you want to call yourselves. I think the mindset needs to change from so much of trying to move white people from a moral standpoint to actually being competitive and playing the game. Like, when you study world history, you realize that we were just the latest people to be conquered. If we really want to be real about it, African people were just basically the latest people to really be conquered like that. The world has always been like this. Somebody has always gotten conquered by another people, right? So we got to be competitive. We got to stop crying. We got to get off our asses. We got to stop looking to affect people from a moral standpoint. And we got to put ourselves in a position to, goddamn it, be competitive. And that's going to come from us working our ass off as individuals and as those critical mass, as the group of people who want to work together, who want it. We're going to have to work to go get to what we got, because ain't nobody going to give us nothing. Think about it. All this crying and all this stuff that we've been doing, all this marching, all the protesting, all the moral standpoint, all the books we've written, all these things that we've done hasn't worked yet. Whatever we want, we got to take it.
I think everything you just said goes back to our willingness to accept and adapt. You know, our willingness to accept our lot in life, which goes back to what we've said is our greatest strength over and over again. And if you're not going to take control of that process, then somebody else is going to control it for you. One of the things that is always interesting to me is that, even because not only do we have to define ourselves, but I don't think we have a really accurate understanding of white people either.
Most of us don't. Most of us don't.
Like,
we know we don't. We know that.
Yeah, right. Like, we don't have a good idea of what the European worldview is to even say that we're going to reject it. Go ahead.
I believe that is because we have a lot of Black people, especially Black people who's supposed to know better. A lot of Black people have a closed mindset, so they only study African history from the scholars that they like. When Dr. John Henry Clark told us to read everything, that's how you you're gonna better understand how the European think by reading the Europeans' literature. You got to study your enemy.
Right. And then see, the problem is, and the interesting thing is, in public schools, they teach you that literature. The only thing they don't teach you is how to interpret it.
Yep.
So all we really got to do is come on the backs and show these kids how to interpret that information. Now, in theory, you know, if we talking purely about the mental and historical understanding aspect of it. But there's also this understanding that, look, we exist in a world where cultures are constantly rubbing against each other, fighting against each other. Yes, I believe in the conflict theory of social existence. You seeing it, like, look at South Koreans and how K-pop has swept through America and taken over so many different spaces in American society. Look at how the Wushu movies not only reshape the Chinaman's opinion of themselves, the people in China, but also reshape global opinion of Chinese people. Every Chinese person you know now, you think he's a half belt away from Bruce Lee.
Yep.
Right. So when we begin to think about these things, we also need to think, look, not only these things didn't just happen to us, right? We happened to them. What happened to white people when they saw that they were able to successfully subjugate us? What happened to white culture when it saw that it was successfully able to adapt and cause certain responses and reactions to Black? Now, this isn't a conversation or a thought process that every Black person needs to be having, but I'm talking specifically to those that want to exist in this intellectual space where you are doing the legwork and the mental work to create a new paradigm for Black people in America. You can't restrict yourself to, well, this happened to us. How did that affect us? No, how did it affect the people that did it to us too? How
Uh,
did it affect the
yeah,
global structure?
yeah. I just want to say this to the intellectual space. The intellectual space is only one piece. We
Yeah.
got to we got to be building. We got to be productive. We got to put stuff into action. Yes, we need an intellectual space, but we need an active space, a building space, a productive space. Because if not, we just talking. All right, let's finish this up.
Of things, the building our own buildings.
See,
We have the ability to do that. So it's almost like we've been conditioned so well through such a long process that now it is us who are enslaving ourselves mentally.
Because the job has already been.
The job has been done. It would be so easy, in one sense, for us to undo it. That's what I'm saying in this book. Because the way the system of European control works is that you have to accept a concept of reality which makes them superior.
hey,
You know
yes,
what? Yeah, I agree with everything about that except that last piece. I would flip it. You don't have to accept the concept of reality that makes them superior. You have to accept one that makes you inferior.
yeah, 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 yeah. We can do it, but it took a while. It took a lot of maturing, took a lot of learning, and it took a lot of being real with myself for me to really come to the conclusion or the realization that everybody not gonna make it. Everybody not gonna make it. And it also took more realization to understand that anything that I want out of life, I'm gonna have to do the work to get it. It's not just gonna happen because I want it to happen. It's not just gonna happen because I'm meditating and manifesting or praying anything. I got to get up and do the work. And that's if we want things to happen, we have to do the work as individuals and as collectives, as part of the group. And at the end of the day, we can't just sit around and try to intellectualize ourselves out of oppression. It ain't worked. Like I've said in the past, I don't believe a black person is real serious about being productive, moving forward, advancing anything if you're only taking one view and just trying to hammer this view home and not understanding that that view is a part of the puzzle. Um, I love the way she was breaking down the information in this because we agree with a lot of things. Some of things, like one thing we disagree, some things we may say different because of the times that we're in and just from our specific worldview. But that doesn't mean she's wrong. It's just the way we view it. But
Mm-hmm.
one of the biggest things is we got to be real with ourselves. We got to have the will to change. Um, if you don't know better, you got to do what you need to do to know better. And if you know better, you got to do better. Yes, there's too many of us who claim to know better who aren't doing better. And I hold them to a higher standard. I hold the people who's supposed to be conscious to a higher standard rather than the people who have no idea what has happened to us. But at the same time, we're still responsible for our own behavior. Yes, we know the root cause. We're still responsible for our thoughts. Yes, we know the root cause, but we're still responsible for ourselves. We're still responsible for fixing what happened to us. We're not going to appeal to any, don't know other group of people really give a damn about us like that because, like I said last week, we're in competition with everybody. But we got to be real with ourselves about our situation and come up with real solutions and be doing real things on a regular basis to change our situation.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get your individual situation together. You got to get your economics together. You got to get your culture together. You got to get your household in order. We all got to do that. Because if we're not, if I'm not on my square as an individual, I can't help you get on your square. I can't help other communities. I can't help the youth. I can't. The youth are going to the youth are going to receive me the way they've been receiving me in the past. Oh yeah, Mr. Joe, you cool, but your situation ain't that much different from mine.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to be better examples.
And I just want to one quick like because what you just said, especially about the youth. Like I said, I've been working with kids for a long time. One of the things that it's sad, but at the same time, it's real. Kids develop a newfound respect for you when they understand that you're financially well
When they
put
can
together.
see the fruits of your labor.
Right. The every kid that I've ever worked with, the moment it clicked for them that Mr. Pat was doing okay financially, like I'm not struggling like a lot of them are. My word carries so much more weight. And it's sad, I understand that, but it's the way it is.
But it's the same way with adults. Let's just be real. It's the same thing with adults. Adults gravitate to success just as much as children do. The words, let's say me and you are in the room. I make 40,000 a year. You make 40, you worth 40 million. We said the same thing. They not listening to me.
Right.
They listening to you. Like being successful has its advantages. Being successful, the influence that could come with it. Like the community is tired of seeing mediocrity. Let's just be real. These kids not gravitating toward mediocrity. These kids and these adults are gravitating towards success. So anybody who talking about fixing the community, we got to be successful. There it is, man. Breakdown Friday. That's how we do it. Joseph Ward, Patrick Irvin, On the Shoulders. Make sure you check out my website, scrolling at the bottom of the screen, www.ontheshoulders1.com. You can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/OTSOG. Hit the super like button under this video. Like I say, man, all of the proceeds and all the support will go back into working with these people, working with the youth, getting back into this community, making as much of an impact as possible, showing these kids what real success look like. That's the whole mission of On the Shoulders of Giants. That's why I started this. I started this because young girls had no idea who Harriet Tubman was. They didn't know our history. So I started this so our children can know our history. And now we're trying to take it further to be able to make the greatest impact on the community as possible. And I'm glad to have Pat riding with me. So this is how we do. Breakdown Friday. Amen. We out. Oh yeah, Pat book link in the description. So y'all make sure y'all support the home.